Richard Trumka, head of the AFL-CIO, has something to say about that. Number 4, if you would, Paul.
From October 10th through the 16th, we're going to have a week of actions around the country in congressional districts, in front of senators, bringing together people of all different stripes. They're going to be small business people. They're going to be non-union people. They're going to be union people. There'll be construction people. A little bit of everything, saying, look, enough of this nonsense. Help us get people back to work. Help us with infrastructure. Help us resurrect manufacturing. Give us some aid to state and local governments so they don't continue to lay off people. Help us put people back to work, or you do so at your own peril.
It's interesting that you have have the head of the AFL-CIO saying this. This is all driven towards big government union jobs. This has nothing to do with the private sector. That's the enemy. They're telling you one thing and they're doing another. The people who are in the streets are been organized by unions. They are in the streets, and they're as dumb as a fence post. None of them can articulate why they're there. The interesting thing is that the reason there are no jobs, Richard, the reason that this country is suffering is because of government. It's because of unions. It's because of the overindulgence in the government structure of empowering unions and sticking their nose with business regulations on all businesses. Want to know why there's no labor jobs? It's because business is being killed by the government. Evan Thomas of Time Magazine chirped in on this. Let me have number 5 here, Paul.
And this is, goofy kids making, banging on drums, and it's all easy to dismiss. But to me, it's a fire bell in the night. It's a significant thing. It may or may not turn to be the Tea Party of the left, but what it does signal is that you're going to have civil unrest here. As the politicians screw around and do nothing, it's not like the people are going to just go home and wait to die. There's going to be real unrest here. It's happening in Greece, but it's coming to our shores. It's here. We're going to, and this is a profoundly. We are on the verge of a 1960s kind of period of tremendous instability and unrest.
A big tantrum of the 60s is now being reinvented by an even dumber, more narcissistic and selfish group of people, the people that come from unions, the people that come from universities and schools, young people who have not been educated, who have been indoctrinated by these universities, who can't speak the English language correctly, who can't think for themselves, who are emotionally driven, who have no idea that why they're in the streets and what they're complaining about as they hold up their cell phone, as they hold up their G4, as they hold up this incredible technology that was created by a couple of individuals. They funded it themselves. They were at risk. They put this out into the market, and all of these liberals, all these progressives are benefiting and enjoying this great technology, and at the same time, they want to destroy it. So they have absolutely no thinking capacity whatsoever. It's just a business model for a failed politic, and what we're really seeing, what we really are seeing is the unfolding of such stupidity by the left. This is desperation. Anybody that can think for themselves, honestly, Paul, has got to be able to see through this.
I mean, I know that back into the 1960s, they a lot of the quote-unquote the Vietnam protesters were just people that certainly just didn't want to put on a uniform and fight. They were just, a lot of them were cowardly. They just had no desire to fight, and they didn't no desire to pick up a weapon or do anything for their country. Could it be said that a lot of these people, these so-called unemployed people, they have no intention of ever getting a job? They're just just people that are just simply on the dole.
Well, they're down there because it's the place to be. It's part of the politic. It's part of contributing to the downfall of not only the area, the immediate area, making a message. I don't know what making a message by defecating on a cop car is, and all of the tantrum throwing that is going on with young demographic people who have been murdered over their futures, have been wiped out over the existence of liberalism in their life. Once these dumb asses come out of college and realize what happened to them in college, they're going to be, I would think, a little disgruntled or upset to the point where they would react against it, because the biggest enemy to young people 30 and under is liberalism, the educational institutions, which aren't educational institutions, the very thing that these people need who are in the streets. What they need right now is they need the Constitution. They need to read it. They need to understand what they're losing, and the promiscuity and the irresponsibility that these people are going through and living is close to finishing them and their offspring, you know.
I know a lot of people poked fun at the Tea Party movement. They kind of made it seem like some of the key figures, the leaders, weren't exactly highly intellectual. But I don't know if we're getting much intellectuality from these protesters themselves. I mean, we're not getting any kind of leadership or any kind of.
There hasn't been one that's been interviewed, and they've been down there a long time. There hasn't been one that's been interviewed that's been able to articulate any semblance of why they're there or explain the bigger picture of what's happened to them. They've just been told to show up by their dumbass teachers, unionites, the AFL-CIO, you know, Richard Trumka, and all of these other sycophants have just said, get out there and show up. We got to get Obama reelected. Now, I want to go to Newt. He has a couple of sound bites here that are really, really interesting. Number 3, Paul.
And we'll get to number 3.
If they want to really change things, the first person to fire is Bernanke, who is a disaster as chairman of the Federal Reserve. The second person to fire is Geithner. The fact is, in both the Bush and the Obama administrations, the fix has been in. And I think it's perfectly reasonable for people to be angry, but let's be clear who put the fix in. The fix was put in by the federal government. And if you want to put people in jail, I want to second what Michelle said. You ought to start with Barney Frank and Chris Dodd, and let's look at the politicians who created the environment, the politicians who profited from the environment, and the politicians who put this country in trouble.
That's leadership, folks. That is absolute stark leadership. It's coming from Newt. He's on his way up, and we're going to continue when we come back on the Fred Dreyer Radio Show.